let's move on to someone at least as important in the world. Let's talk about Nick Clegg. Nick Clegg is now one of the most powerful men in the world at Facebook, or Meta as it has become known. He is the president of Global Affairs, a title that in some ways makes him sound a bit like a marriage wrecker. By some reports, he's paid up to £15 million a year. And Facebook, now known as Meta, plans to make us all live in an unreal virtual alternative world, although with Clegg riding so high, maybe we're already in one. Fred, do you think he might be the most successful Liberal Democrat in human history?
Sounds very like it in terms of income generation. If he's on 15, well, somebody said one of his contemporaries on 24 million. I don't know whether that's sterling or dollars. It doesn't really matter when you get to those kind of echelons. I'm like you, Hugo. I'm still on Facebook. Well, maybe you're not on Facebook, but I still am. But I reckon it's probably 5, maybe even 10 years since I started thinking to myself, I must get off this. I must move on. Move away from Facebook. I mean, you're looking at a man here in his 60-somethings that, you know, I'm actually thinking about giving up Bebo and MySpace as well. I seem to have left several generations behind. But it's Facebook, now known as Meta, and I suspect that will go on for years and years. But as far as Nick Clegg is concerned, I have no idea what his job title means. I have no idea what he does for the organisation. But, I mean, if he's getting 15 million a year, clearly a very successful Lib Dem.
Yes, no, very, very successful Lib Dem. I think he's basically in charge of like pretending to support while actually fending off regulation around the world. I don't know. I remember when he got his job, you could kind of basically divide people up into people who were really, really disappointed with Nick Clegg for being associated with Facebook, and people who were really, really disappointed with Facebook for being associated with Nick Clegg. And everyone was one or the other. Emily, you wrote about Nick Clegg this week, did you not?
I did, yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts about Nick Clegg. Yeah, I wrote all about it for Mail Plus. I was like, oh, Nick Clegg, I'm going to fire off my angry typing. So Sheryl Sandberg is obviously famous for writing the book Lean In is her book that she wrote. And I think that Nick Clegg should write one called Fail Up, because I mean, like, he's a disaster. He's the ex-MP for Sheffield Hallam, isn't he, basically? I mean, I voted for this man because I thought that he was going to do something about tuition fees, which have now...
He did do something about tuition fees.
You know, yeah, not in a good way. Not in a good way. And I met a man on the train last, really young guy, £60,000 worth in debt, in student loans. And like, that was more than, I'm still paying off my student debt, but that is not... Yeah. That's cripplingly young. And the thing is like, it's not even like he was going into a profession that would justify that kind of bill. So he can, I was just so angry. Because then he gave us an AV referendum. He sent £75 million on an AV referendum, which could have been spent on teaching, the 1 in 5 children who leave primary school unable to read.
Or employing him for 5 whole years, Emily. Yeah.
Exactly. I know. And now, and you're completely right, Hugo, because I think this is shenanigans. Like, he should be, because he's head of policy, basically. So he's now as powerful as Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg's taking a step back. And obviously Nick Clegg, having been deputy PM of the UK and sold out all his own principles, but basically was allowed to go and hobnob around, the EU, and now knows all these EU commissioners. And he emailed one of them, this is in the column, I can't remember her name, I'm afraid, but he emailed one of them the day after his appointment saying, I know you have reservations about Facebook, but I hope you think it's a great idea to have a liberal in Silicon Valley. Well, he sold out his liberal principles, didn't he? I mean, he certainly sold out the students on the tuition fees thing. I'm really actually quite disturbed by this move. Like, I don't think that politicians should be able to have oligarchical power on this level.
Yeah, well, I guess he's not a politician anymore. But I mean,
ex-politician, but he's used his political contacts to get that job. Yeah. And you're right, he's got the great contacts, and he is going to go around saying, selling out people who have their data taken regularly by Facebook.
Fred, have you ever been into the metaverse, and do you know what it is?
Well, I guess it might well have been, but I was completely unaware of it at the time, and I didn't inhale. Was it Marguerite Vestager the person's name?
Yeah,
Emily.
yes.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got your
that's
column
right.
up here. But
All
it says here that he is now president of global affairs, which for an ex-politician, I'm sure Boris Johnson's got his eye on that one.
Yeah.
I've been into the metaverse. I wrote an article about the metaverse a couple of months ago, and basically,
Where is it?
Where is it? It's wherever you want it to be. You basically you put on a mask, Fred. You put on like a VR mask, and then it takes you off to a sort of a variety of places. You can go and see. I went and watched Billie Eilish do a gig in the metaverse. I wandered around with my friend Jeremy. We were both sexually molested in the metaverse, I should say, pretty swiftly,
Oh my God.
which Facebook were very upset about and apologetic about afterwards, because a man ran up to us and did mean things. It was kind of it's very, I don't know, it's one of these things that you put on your headset and you journey into the metaverse and you sort of meet up with your disembodied friends with their avatars and the breasts they've accidentally given themselves, in the case of my friend Jeremy, because he couldn't work the software well enough. And you're kind of like, this is amazing, this is totally the future, for about 7 minutes, whereupon it suddenly becomes quite boring. You know, it's quite weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. But Fred, are you excited generally about the idea of living in parallel worlds, even if they are ruled over by Nick Clegg?
It's just all come flooding back to me, Hugo. I have been in the metaverse. My Second Life avatar.
Oh wow!
Spent all my bitcoins, which is why I'm doing radio shows on Saturday mornings.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one day perhaps, you know, when we do radio shows like this, instead of just talking on the radio, we'll be sitting around a virtual table as people come and virtually join us with our avatars. It's good having an avatar. You can make it considerably younger and better looking. Mine had a nose ring. I was very excited. Anyway, look, let's move on from Clegg. This was a good one. I like this story this week very much. Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, he was talking this week about the Great British Bake Off. He was speaking to the Radio Times, no relation, and he said, "My wife and daughter watch Bake Off, and I absolutely don't. I think it's the modern equivalent of gladiatorial games." Is he right that being fed to the lions is the equivalent of having your profiteroles fed to Prue Leith? Some say yes, some say no, and those who say no weirdly include Justin Welby, who wrote to the Times saying it had all been a big joke. I don't know. Fred, what do you think? Is Bake Off brutal?
I completely misread this. I didn't know it was the Greco-Roman times he was referring to. I thought he was talking about Gladiators, the television program from 5 years ago.
Absolutely is the equivalent.
And I just thought, God, I do not want to see Prue Leith, bless her, on the hang tough.
fighting with giant cotton buds.
Yes. Who with Jurgen ready, Prue Leith ready. I don't know.
I think Fred's hitting a really good idea there. I like Fred's. That's a really good idea, Fred. What they should do, they should bring back Gladiators. They should just do a mashup, and they should have all the contestants go through the Gladiators thing, holding their cakes.
Wow. Yeah. Well, so fight basically on that sort of turny hand thing, going down a zip wire while holding a gatto at the bottom. Paul Hollywood in a leotard. This is not sounding wonderful, I would say. I don't know.
Or even worse would be the Colosseum in Rome with gladiators custard pieing each other.
Like a giant, make it into a giant wedding cake. Sorry, Fred, you were saying.
Yeah, I do know that the moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland says that the Great British Sewing Bee is the modern day equivalent of the Crusades.
Do you think that is there a proper argument here, Emily? Do you think actually, you know what, all these kind of shows that we have, all these talent shows going right back to not even X Factor and beyond, they have sort of made us cruel and they have made us enjoy people's dismay. I was talking about the Apprentice the other week with Jenny Colgan was on, and she said she'd absolutely stopped finding the Apprentice amusing because when she suddenly realised that all these people were in their 20s and would never be able to afford a house, and it just sort of changes everything. Have we just become really sneery about misfortune?
Maybe. I mean, I don't watch any of these programs. Like when I read that Justin Welby had said that, I thought, like, does he need to go back to school to learn some history? Because that's not what gladiator fights were like. Like they were not like the British Bake Off from when I watched it for the first series because I had to write about it for the Mail on Sunday. Yeah, it's. I don't know. I mean, the thing is like I think the future. I hope it's not, your metaverse adventure. I hope that's not going to take off. But I think that TV is going to become increasingly irrelevant, and it's all about, with the young, it's all about TikTok and YouTube. And I think that these things are a thing of the past. Yeah. Whether that's going to be an improvement or not, I don't know. But I barely watch
But
I haven't watched The Apprentice. Like, I don't watch these programs anymore.
But then even the TikTok and YouTube, it's 90% people being hit in the face by flying stop signs, isn't it? You know, it's even more
That's
brutal,
true.
even more brutal.
Even
Anyway,
more brutal.
let you know, on this program after 11, I will be speaking to Charlotte Ivers, Times radio political correspondent, about what's going on in the world of politics, and I'll be speaking to Antoine Laris, who I told you about earlier. He lost his wife in the 2015 Paris attacks, and he's written his second memoir about trying to move on from those events. This is Hugo Rifkind on Times Radio in association with NetWealth. Find out more at netwealth.com.